Now we're getting started. Ready? Ready. If you want the short version, here's the list. Don't say I never did anything for you. These are my personal, top of mind textual recommendations for this particular moment in the world, particularly in my home country of the United States of America. But it is no secret that right now we are seeing a final, desperate, vicious lashing out in multiple countries across the globe as old ways and old heads lose their grip. It's an extinctive burst, which is common in dog training actually. And it's disguised as traditional values, but it really means, remember when life sucked? Well, I don't. So let's go back there. And I'm taking you with me.
Whether you like it or not.
So these are books that will help you through it now that you have been led to it, like it or not. You get what I'm trying to say? I'm going to give a very brief spitfire overview of each of them so that you can kind of get an idea of how they might be helpful. But I'm not going to go into too much detail because you really should read them yourself if you feel so inclined. Everything might not be for you in this list, and there's probably a lot more that would be relevant and helpful in some way than what I have put on this list. These are just, personal to me. And this is my YouTube channel, so suck it. It's mine. I'm sorry, that was aggressive. We're going to get into the list now. On tyranny. If you're in the same circles as me, you've probably already heard about this one a million times. In fact, it was this one that inspired me making the video. It ended up being practically impossible for me to get this book from a library, either in digital or physical form. So I did end up having to just go ahead and download it for myself, which ended up being a good thing because now I have it for an unlimited amount of time to go over when I need it. It's a very short read, 126 pages broken into 20 sections. And each of those sections is basically a different tip or piece of advice for how to navigate the new reality that an unnamed candidate will bring into existence. The book was published in 2017. Let's think about who they could be referencing and why that might be relevant even today. So here's what you can find on Google. Timothy David Snyder is an American historian specializing in the history of Central and Eastern Europe, the Soviet Union, and the Holocaust. He draws a lot of parallels, which are indeed worrisome. However, one thing I really appreciate is that he gives actual, actionable advice for how to combat these worrisome trends that we might be seeing. Yes, there are dangerous ideals that have been laying dormant for a while, suddenly kicked back up and swirling around us like dust in Grandpa's attic trying to choke us out. But we have the benefit of knowledge, connection, and technology like never before in human history. Snyder reminds us of how to keep our heads while simultaneously keeping vigilant, because he keeps it real. There's no sugar in his tone, but there's no panic either. Just a realistic assessment of the past and a reminder of the power that individuals still have at present. So I really recommend this one. Rest is Resistance, a Manifesto. I have to admit something to you guys. I have not read this one. I've started, but I have not finished it. I just needed to add it to this list regardless, because it's also been getting a lot of lip service lately, and it belongs here. Here's a blurb. Disrupt and push back against capitalism and white supremacy. In this book, Tricia Hersey, aka the Nap Bishop, encourages us to connect to the liberating power of rest, daydreaming, and naps as a foundation for healing and justice. Now, you might be thinking, how in the hell is resting at odds with white supremacy? She does explain. You might also think, I can't rest. I can't afford it. Yeah, you need this book. And even though I haven't finished it yet, I have listened to multiple discussions of the contents and learned a bit more about the Nap Bishop herself. Here's the thing. So often, we feel very overwhelmed by the powers of the big players in the world, which we are not. We know that they're benefiting from our exhaustion and our never-ending struggle, but we believe that we do not have the power, aka resources, to stop, even for a moment, and address the broken system directly, because then we'll die. Like, that's what it comes down to, right? stop running on the wheel and everything grinds to a halt, falls apart at your feet. Not being able to pay bills means we die. It's the same thing, or at least that's how we feel. That's what we've been told. That's what keeps us running. Trisha Hersey's story is important, and I might just do a full review once I actually finish this book, but I recommend it if, like me, you are trying to figure out what you can do right here, right now with what you already have. That will actually make a difference, not just in your own life, but in the world at large. And that can be as easy as taking a step back and just chilling out for no real reason other than the sake of resting. How to do nothing. Resisting the attention economy. I love this book. And speaking of what you can do with what you have right now, this one's got it. Social media is more important than we think. Yes, it's insidious, and it has crept into our lives in a troubling way. Everyone knows that by now. Everyone knows that by now. And since the election, a lot of folks are doing a digital detox or just deleting their Amazon, Facebook, Instagram, X, etc. And this is usually explained as a way of trying to preserve or reestablish their mental health. But it's actually much more than that. Odell mentions this concept of resistance in place, which I honestly think about a lot and have done for the last several years since I first read this book. Where you are with what you have, what can you do? Well, guess what? Your attention is just as valuable as your money. So making an effort to refocus where you put that attention is just as, if not more, powerful than redirecting your dollars, especially if you have limited dollars in the first place. The fact is, we are organic beings, just apes. The technology that we have created far surpasses our brain's computing power because it is just an organic, globby gelatin mass. The brain is magnificent, but it cannot compete with these rocks. I'm pointing at my laptop right now. It cannot keep up with the never-ending, quick-firing, overwhelming deluge of events and thoughts and ideas and diatribes and advertisements and artwork, entertainment and destination and war and death and crises constantly being thrown at us online. It just can't. We cannot do that. Those immediate emotional responses are great for marketing. They're great for metrics. They're great for engagement, but not for actual human relationships. And both authors also really drive home the importance of resting. True self-care is an act of rebellion. It is doing things that ensure that we persist healthily and fully in a world that profits off of our slow, agonizing destruction. And if you want to know the hows and whys, give it a read. Conversations with People Who Hate Me. Based on his groundbreaking podcast, Dylan Marron went from being a troll of the right to a builder of bridges by selecting some of the hate comments left on his content over the years and reaching out to those people on the other side of the screen to talk to one-on-one. The conversations generally centered around what caused them to leave those comments in the first place. Now, I know that talk of peace with the other side is controversial in and of itself right now. And honestly, I go back and forth on whether or not it's even worth it. But the case made by these open, honest, personal conversations is a pretty strong one. It's a reminder of humanity. One of the many great quotes from this book, which again is one that I think about a lot, is empathy is not endorsement. You can feel for someone. You can empathize with them, understand their feelings. That does not mean that you still endorse their actions. And if you needed that reminder, I highly suggest the book, the podcast, or the TED Talk. Useful Delusions: The Power and Paradox of the Self-Deceiving Brain. Okay, so hear me out on this one. You might be thinking, what does this have to do with anything? And the quickest way that I can summarize my thought process is this: being delulu has scientific merit and health benefits. This one can help you further that sense of empathy, which is most effectively grown through narrative, but which can really be hammered down once you understand the scientific data behind it all. At least that's how it works for me. And in this time of great uncertainty and stress, especially for the secular and secluded, there's a lot of valuable information in why exactly you really should find something to believe in. Now, I'm not talking about converting to some kind of religion, don't get me wrong, but you might have seen this Carl Sagan quote floating around recently. I have a foreboding of an America in my children's or grandchildren's time, when the United States is a service and information economy, when nearly all the manufacturing industries have slipped away to other countries, when awesome technological powers are in the hands of a very few, and no one representing the public interest can even grasp the issues, when the people have lost the ability to set their own agendas or knowledgeably question those in authority, when, clutching our crystals and nervously consulting our horoscopes, our critical faculties in decline, unable to distinguish between what feels good and what's true, we slide, almost without noticing, back into superstition and darkness. The dumbing down of America is most evident in the slow decay of substantive content in the enormously influential media, the 30-second sound bites, now down to 10 seconds or less, lowest common denominator programming, credulous presentations on pseudoscience and superstition, but especially a kind of celebration of ignorance. That was a mouthful. Which, cool, educated white man who could just opt out of religion and superstition in order to prove that he was way more intellectually sufficient than all the rest of us. That certainly does not make him unique. It also doesn't make him wrong, though. In dark times, humans have been known to clutch our crystals and consult our horoscopes. But there's science behind it. Behind embracing that we do not know everything. And there might, dare I say, be something more out there. That we alone do not control every aspect of our own fates or the fates of others. I am not saying to leave everything up to invisible spirit beings, to turn away from advancement, to revert back into uneducated medieval peasants. I'm saying find a way to do both. Keep an eye on what's going on around you. Keep seeking information, especially the dangerous kind, but maybe for your own health and longevity, give some of it up to something beyond yourself. Science is the language of explaining what we know, and we do not know everything yet. But we have discovered that there are merits to belief in something greater, to a faith, if you will, that things will work out for the better in the end, whether or not we actually have the evidence of that. There is actual data backing up longevity, health, lower stress levels, etc., etc. This is also tied to community. And if a community can share a belief, this does not have to be any kind of pseudoscientific belief, but just a belief in general, boom, you get a dose of those benefits too. So there's merit to belief in something greater. And there's a reason why people who believe in something greater tend to stick around through the worst tragedies in history. There's also some super interesting stuff in there on placebos. Just wanted to throw that in because I think it's really interesting. Moving on. 10 ways to be prepared and grounded now that Trump has won. This is actually an article, and I'll link it in the description. The title is pretty self-explanatory, I hope. Again, I really like stuff that doesn't just say how and why you should think and do things a certain way, but actually gives you actions to take, some real direction. It's all well and good to say you should find community, but then how do you actually do that? There's some overlap here with On Tyranny. In fact, it is directly referenced in the article, particularly in the step that you might also have heard of now that things are going down. Do not
sell marijuana to my husband.
Do not self-censor. In the days of yore, when a certain hated party were taking over in Germany, do you know that the common people went ahead and acted the way that they thought their new leader would want them to before he even asked? In fact, he had doubts that he could make the sweeping changes that he envisioned because he expected people to resist, and then they didn't. over and over, they went ahead and they laid power at his feet. And this was because they wanted to be good and stay out of trouble. It's good to know that, to know what to watch out for, what to stay vigilant against in ourselves and in others. And there's even more direct advice and examples in the text that I've been listing, but this is a great article for, again, grounding yourself, not losing yourself to panic, mapping out those actionable steps so that you can have a plan. Hey guys, it's me, Sharon Osborne. When I was originally filming that, it had only been a few days, and now it's been not even a month, but lots of things have already been happening. So there's an article from the New York Times titled "Don't Believe Him" by Ezra Klein. I actually didn't read it in article format. You can also find it just in audio, spoken aloud, or in video format. I really recommend it. It was made in direct response to how things are shaking out with the current situation. So instead of just getting caught up in here's what you can read that's speculative, this is happening in real time, and it breaks down a lot of what you might have been seeing in the news, across social media, and what it actually means. It's not just hopeful, but it comes with receipts, which is something that I also value very, very much. So I would be remiss if I didn't hop on now and just add that in. Okay, now back to the video. The power. We're now in fiction territory, so you can dip if that's not really your thing. But I mentioned before that lessons are only internalized, like understood from the bones out, through narrative, through personal account. You can know things intellectually, but not really know them as you would through experience until you've gone through them, and a narrative is a great way to have that experience even when you haven't actually had that experience. Heavy trigger warnings with this one though. This is a powerful book. So what if women everywhere developed a strong electrical pulse, a power that suddenly gave them a physical advantage over men? What would happen to this wretched patriarchal world if the roles were finally reversed? Spoiler alert, it's war and it's a mess. This book gets dark, down in the nitty-gritty of human nature, beyond just that shallow facade of battle of the sexes. The quote from this one that I think about the most is, "You can't get there from here," as in you can't get to utopia from where we are in the current state of the world. I think I mentioned it in a previous video as well. And maybe that seems pessimistic, but if you read the book, you'll understand. Now, it's not a happy ending, fair warning. It's not clean, and justice is not served in a lot of cases. But I think that I like this one because there are just moments of deep, savage retribution that really did something for me. There were things in this book that I did not know I needed. I can't really explain it, but reading this book did change me. So if any of that sounds intriguing to you, I really, really recommend it. Girl Made of Stars. Heavy trigger warnings again. This book is about rape. I don't even know if I can technically say that on YouTube anymore, but it feels really friggin' silly to call it grape when that is not at all. No, that's like a berry, that's a fruit. Anyways, rape is central to the plot. Normally, I would stay away from books like these because this particular issue is personal to me, and media at large treats it as just a fun little thing to sprinkle over a narrative whenever they feel like it needs some spice. Anyway, this book approaches the topic in a non-graphic way, so already that was points to it for me. It's not gratuitous. The fallout after is the point. What happened because of this incident is the point. We follow Mara, a teenager whose twin brother Owen is accused of raping his girlfriend and Mara's friend, Hannah. But instead of mapping out a gruesome revenge plot and using vicious, visceral attacks on women as a fun and predictable plot device, this book talks about the reality. It's from the perspective of a regular teenage girl who doesn't have power or options to make all of this all right in the end. But she is a teen girl who is not alone. What's so great to me about this book is that even though justice is not served all clean and neat at the end, the anger and the sorrow and the wreckage are validated. And they're validated specifically because you can see their effects and you can see how it's denied by so many people. People who should be protecting these girls. But when it comes down to it, don't show up in the way we would like to imagine that they always would. It's not about romanticizing or belittling the events that happened to the victims in the story. It's about the fact that it happens and justice might not be served, but you can recover. You can be strong again. The effort to help people who have been wronged and tossed aside and treated like absolute trash when they were already at their lowest point does make a difference. Solidarity is important, even if the world itself is against you. Even if rapists are worshipped and empowered by groups of people who would rather believe that the victims are the villains. And I think the reason that this one stuck with me so much is at the time of reading it, I really needed the reminder that good people together can endure despite all of the efforts made to destroy them. So yeah, I really like that book. And if you find that you are angry at the state of the world and you feel as though you might be becoming so angry that you have tunnel vision and all you can see is the people making you angry, and you've started to maybe forget about the people right next to you who you're angry for, who are being eclipsed, let's say, by said anger. It's basically if you're super freaking angry at what's going on and you've kind of forgot to keep that softness to hold that space for the people around you who still need you, this is a good reminder about that. There's not a whole lot that we can do like Katniss Everdeen out there, really, at the end of the day, but there's a lot that we can do like Mara in this story. Okay, so those are my textual recommendations for this particular moment in history. I've said it before on TikTok and I'll say it again here. Be prepared. Stay ready so you don't have to get ready. And it's funny because the anxiety which I do have and the ADHD which I am currently getting tested for, at this moment in time, they feel like they might just be superpowers. Because I am never as calm and collected as when there is an actual crisis going on. Like once in college, my car caught on fire while I was driving it with my roommate and my dog in there with me, and I ended up making jokes on the phone to the 911 operator. It's just nice to know that when I'm thinking of all the different ways that things could go and all the different ways that I need to be prepared and have exit strategies in case this, or this happens, that I'm not actually crazy. There's a reason to actually take action. It's gotten me this far. Now, do I think that the United States is going to fall? Probably not. But there are some serious liberties at risk that are already being chipped away. I'm privileged in that my life will most likely not be that affected. Not unless my birth control fails, I become a victim of violence or disease, or they target my friends and family who are part of minority groups, which is why I'm working on preparing for all of the above. So guys, get on it. I don't say this to scare, but to prepare. And even if literally nothing goes wrong, tell me what is the downside to doing any of the stuff I just listed. I'm gonna be taken care of and ready for a cool trip. There is literally no downside, and therefore I'm not crazy. But that's not really what this video is about, is it? I'm gonna wrap it up. So go forth, gain knowledge, get ready, and stay safe out there. Bye.